Okay. So, welcome everyone to this video. I'm Dr. Tim McGinnis. I'm the managing director of the Society of Citizens Against Relationship Scams, Inc. We are a global nonprofit based in Miami, Florida, with offices in Monterrey, Nuevo Leon, Mexico, as well as in Miami, Florida, our sister organization in Guangzhou, China, partners and affiliates in more than 60 countries around the globe. Our mission is to support the victims of cybercrime, online scams, and fraud worldwide by providing victims assistance, advocacy, support, and services to victims worldwide. So, Emmanuel, perhaps you can introduce yourself and your nonprofit organization as well.
Thank you, Tim. My name is Emmanuel Adinkra. Everyone calls me Manny. I'm the founder and president of Ghana Internet Safety Foundation. This is a charity or a non-profit organization that was birthed. Our goal and our objective is to create awareness to the threats of online experience. We do research, we do initiatives to influence policy in Ghana, to help foster, a positive ecosystem for our internet users. We also work with partners across the world, a couple of partners to ensure that every citizen of Ghana, so far as they have a mobile device or are able to connect to the internet, are aware of the opportunity it offers, and also the threats that they face. We involve a lot with issues related to digital parenting, because we've identified that as a major, gap with regards to influencing how our citizens in Ghana use the online devices. So it's a pleasure to meet you, Tim, and we are excited to engage with the organization. And before we even get deeper into it, one thing I can say is that Ghana has a big issue with victims and how they receive support. Most of the time, they would report the issues to the law enforcement authorities, and it literally, in most cases, ends there. Sometimes they will make an arrest, but it's a slap on the wrist. But once that is done, the victim themselves do not get adequate support, to deal with the trauma and the challenges that they face. So it's a pleasure talking to you, and I am hopeful that through this conversation and through collaboration, we will be able to extend the good works that your organization and your partners are doing right down to Ghana.
Thank you. Be sure to speak up because you're getting a little soft there.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. We do understand this. As I mentioned, we have interacted and spoken extensively with Confidence Daily and her organization in Nigeria, and we understand that the challenges on the ground in Nigeria, in Ghana, and we imagine most other West African countries, is a similar experience, that the cyber criminals that are so aggressively deceiving victims around the world also work within your own countries to deceive the local populations in their own ways as well. In some cases, we've learned in Nigeria that while the amount of money is nothing in comparison to what they bring in from the outside, the number of victims that these same cyber criminals victimize, create new victims, is a gigantic number. We believe in Nigeria that the cyber criminals are victimizing certainly tens of thousands of local citizens a year, possibly hundreds of thousands a year, because everybody is on their mobile phone and they're trying to use the latest apps and websites and do mobile banking, and
Mm-hmm.
because they lack the generational experience of being a digital citizen online, it's easier to deceive and mislead and take them in directions that uh, perhaps more experienced peoples would be less likely to go. But the truth is,
Mm-hmm.
our experience has been that virtually everybody can be scammed. It doesn't matter what your prior experience or knowledge is, or even
Mm-hmm.
intelligence or
Mm-hmm.
cultural background is. It makes no difference.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
same techniques that work on a 20-year-old in Minneapolis,
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin, is going to be the same technique that is going to work on someone in Accra.
Yeah. That's
And
true.
the the tragedy, as much as anything, in all of
Mm-hmm.
this is the development of such a large number of individuals. And we do understand the financial pressures.
Yeah.
Financial pressures alone don't justify or excuse criminality.
Mm-hmm.
But what we see in Nigeria, and unfortunately we
Mm-hmm.
see nothing coming out of Ghana, but we
Mm-hmm.
see in Nigeria that the vast majority of the cyber criminals who are arrested are
Mm-hmm.
college undergraduates or are graduates of their
Mm-hmm.
university system.
Yeah.
So maybe you can talk more about the domestic cyber dangers to the population of Ghana and what that looks like, and who are the typical victims, and what types of deceptions, what type of fraud, what type of scams are they being subjected to.
Okay. Take all that question down.
Thank you.
Go.
Maybe first you can tell me a little bit about the history of your organization, when it was founded, and
Okay.
how you're working, and to what extent you're interacting with the Ghanaian government.
Oh, great. Thank you, Tim. So the organization Ghana Internet Safety Foundation was founded in 2014. Um, I had this vision that in the nearest future, the internet boom in Ghana was going to pose an existential threat to the citizens in terms of how it gets woven into our daily lives, right? So over the years from 2014, I have led a team to strategically engage certain entities in Ghana, even right before the government set up its cybersecurity authority. We were already on the ground. We pride ourselves in being grassroots and not just always sitting at the top of the tree and just doing policy and doing advocacy, but going to the schools, going to the churches, the mosque, the marketplace, and engaging with the people and creating the advocacy with them. We work with the Cybersecurity Authority of Ghana. We've partnered them through their Child Online Protection Department or agency. We work with the Ministry of Education. That allows us, access to all the schools in Ghana. So we have advocacy campaigns or awareness campaigns. We've also worked with Facebook. They've supported us in the past. We are currently receiving support from Microsoft. And I think just under 2 weeks ago, we were awarded a grant from Google to start a research into the issues that Ghana faces, in the online space. That program will be commencing, I think, in January. So in terms of engagement with the government, we are on that level. The Cybersecurity Authority is a parent organization that you want to deal with. And then the Ministry of Education is where we get our core audience, because we realize that the internet population or penetration in Ghana is currently, I think, around 71%, but a huge chunk of it lies with the users, lies with the young population or the young adult population. But the threats and the dangers that we face, we realized come from the middle school to high school and then to the university. So the goal is to start advocacy and awareness and reshaping their minds to the consciousness that, hey, it's not only about getting on social media and, putting up false profiles and putting up false content to create a certain persona. It has an impact. So we advocate about digital citizenship and digital footprints. And we tell our users that, hey, you have three forms of life. You don't just have a physical or a biological or a spiritual life. Now you have a digital life. And when you give birth to your digital baby, as soon as you take a phone or a device, electronic device, and connect to the internet, you've given birth to a digital baby. And you want to nurture the baby to become a responsible adult. And these are the issues you need to know. So our work has cut across. We are not religiously biased. We go to the mosque, we go to the churches, we go to the traditional folks. We reach out to parents. Last year, we launched the first National Digital Parenting Conference to bring all parent teacher associations together to let them know that, hey, these are the issues. Don't just hand your phones or tablets to your kids to just be on YouTube and unrestricted. You need to be aware that it's a habit and it's a culture change. And it starts from you, the parents at home. Don't spend all your time on the devices, and the kids will pick on that attitude and it becomes a problem. So our work has gone that far, and there is so much grounds to still cover in Ghana alone. Ghana is currently having more than 10 administrative regions. We haven't done up we haven't done six of them. We are currently operating within 4 to 5. Obviously, due to logistical and sometimes bureaucratic reasons, it becomes a challenge to do that. There are certain regions that is endemic with cybercrime, or certain areas of the population that is well known to be a boiling point for cybercrime. These are areas that they groom people, they groom the youth, to get into that business. And when you want to get into that area, it's quite challenging. But we are confident that we will make inroads in that space. Now the
If I
scope,
might,
yeah,
let me just ask a question on that topic.
yeah.
So, in terms of the challenge of trying to reach into those regions or those
hmm
areas,
hmm
is it a question of it being bureaucratic barriers that are put in your way, or is it the potential for physical violence?
No, it wouldn't be. It will be more of a bureaucratic process in terms of engaging the key actors in that space, right? So we go to the grassroots and we identify a hub of cyber criminals, right? And then we want to talk to them, you know, not at least to the top people in that hub, but the key low-lying actors, the young people that we know they are involved or they've been recruited. We want to get to them, interview them, find out what is their motivation, because it's not always about, we found out that it's not always that they are coming from a poor background. Some of them are coming from a good homes, but they still end up in that space, right? So we want to engage them, but then you hit a roadblock where their superiors or their commanders will prevent them from engaging with us. So at a certain point, you will just have to leave that hub and then just wait for the person to graduate to school or graduate from school, because they will leave that geographic location and get into a university. Then you can reach out to them at the university and hope that they will talk to you. So that has been one of the challenges that we have faced, on the grassroots. Now, on the landscape of cybercrime in Ghana, the key one that stands out is mobile money fraud or remittance fraud. I'm pretty sure Confidence might have mentioned the same in Nigeria, but Ghana now is a big issue for us. People are being scammed of their monies. And then we have social media account takeovers through WhatsApp. The cyber criminals will, socially engineer a victim and have them send their code and then they take over the person's account and then start sending messages to their contacts that, hey, I'm in trouble, emergency, send me this money. That is also very, I'm pretty sure you've heard all the stories.
It's a universal problem. They're just
Yeah.
taking the same
Hmm.
scripts and the same mechanisms and the same uh, techniques and applying
Yeah.
it to people within Ghana, and
Yes.
and it's 100% effective. It works.
Yes, it works. And the interesting thing we've seen over the last 15 to 18 months is that we've had a subtle influx of Nigerian cyber criminals that are setting up hubs in the capital city of Ghana and then the next region to Accra, the eastern region. They come in and hire houses or rent houses, and then they put these guys in there and they train them. We also have the Indians also coming in to set up these rings, cyber criminal rings, and then to recruit locally and then to radicalize these children, youth into this business. So the scope of cybercrime has evolved over the last 10 years. It started off with Simbox fraud, and then when social media boom started, we went into mobile money fraud. Now we are dealing with issues of sextortion, blackmail, and also dealing with issues relative to cyberbullying.
Right.
Yes.
A
And
question: you're seeing the influence of Indian,
mhm,
we'll just call them cartels for lack of a
cartels,
better
yeah.
term.
Hmm.
Are you also seeing influence of Chinese criminal organizations coming into Ghana and doing the same thing, or
Aha. Hmm.
variations? The Chinese criminals have a tendency to set up houses or offices
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
actually kidnap
Hmm.
people who are applying for jobs and holding them hostage until forcing them to do scams, as
Hmm.
they're forcing them to do in many other countries, uh,
Yeah.
Kenya and Tanzania, all the way to Southeast Asia, Laos, Cambodia, and other countries. Are you seeing that kind of thing in Ghana
W-
as well?
We have seen the Chinese in Ghana, but they are operating in a different space. They are deep into illegal mining, gold mining.
Yes.
But then there was a story, an interesting story a couple of months ago where a couple of Chinese had been arrested relative to what you just described. They had hired youth and then put them in a house to perpetrate online scam. But the scams they were, running were not targeting local folks. They were targeting outside, people in Europe and in US. So they are doing it. Just that in our situation, they do not kidnap them. They coerce them.
Right.
Reach a certain target, and then we will get you this. And the youth are motivated to do it.
Right.
So the situation is not getting any better. It's getting worse, especially due to the economic situation in Ghana. And unemployment amongst the youth. A chunk of the youth are unemployed and they are finishing universities with all these skills and they feel they have nowhere to go. So the quickest way to make a money is through these means, you know. But um, we need an intervention. We need to intervene and create awareness and put in programs that can remediate this kind of situation because what we also realize is that the key actors are ignorant of the implications of the things that they are doing. Most of the youth or citizens in Ghana do not even know the cybersecurity authority exists. They do not know that there are laws now that can imprison you when you are taken to court and found guilty for doing things like exchanging nude pictures of a victim or committing mobile money fraud. They do not know. They feel that they can sit in Ghana in a remote town and then run a scam on someone in the US. And they think that is not too far out. They think that, hey, no one can find me in my little corner. But that has changed. Just this year and late last year, the FBI has conducted a lot of raids targeting Ghanaian cyber criminals all the way to the northern part of Ghana, to arrest them and bring them stateside to the Southern District of California and put them in jail. We have certain Ghanaians here that have in US here that have also been arrested, for perpetrating and facilitating money laundering through illegal proceeds of received from victims here. So that knowledge is subdued. The press, the media in Ghana do not highlight the fact that you are not hidden. Don't think that you can hide behind your screen and commit these crimes. Everything is transparent now. So that is one. Two, most of the youth are brilliant. They are smart. The ability to apply social engineering skills and adapt these from external parties, criminals, and apply to the local populace shows some level of intellect. That level of intellect is being misapplied.
Right.
So one of our programs, hopefully next year, is to retrain. And this is a program that has been done in Nigeria. There was an organization we spoke to recently that they work with the police and the judicial system. They go to the prisons and they recruit cyber criminals, especially the young ones, and provide them alternative means to apply those skills, turn them to programmers, turn them to IT or cybersecurity specialists,
Right.
and give them a means of livelihood. Otherwise, when they serve their sentence and they come out, chances are that they are going back to that trade. They are going back, and now they are hardened criminals. So those are some of the things that we are dealing with. I've already spoken to the types of fraud that we have: mobile money, sextortion, blackmail, um, cyberbullying, uh, financial scams,
Right.
and the biggest one is, especially with US and Canada, is you have parties here that do money laundering. So they steal credit cards, they get mules here to put it into the accounts. They buy the cards and they ship them to Ghana.
Yep.
And these guys, sell the cars and, clean the money. It's also a big thing for us to the extent that the EU blacklisted Ghana for illegal money transfers or put Ghana on a blacklist. And most of the citizens at that time didn't understand why Ghana is being blacklisted. But that dark economy, of the Ghanaian, system is really booming. And you have some politicians, you have some big people in society involved in that. And when you try and trace the tree, you realize that, oh, there's a member of parliament, there's a government official that is backing all this operation. Of course, you can't get concrete evidence at this time, but when you speak to the low actors in the game, they will tell you that, hey, this member of parliament is behind this, you know. So it makes pushing legislation and policy sometimes also difficult when they know that it's going to affect their source of illegal income.
Yeah. It comes down to the integrity of law enforcement to a great extent.
Mhm, mhm,
Nigeria has been fortunate for many years with its Economics and Financial Crimes Commission. But
mhm,
the insanity in Nigeria is every time there's a presidential election, they arrest the leadership of the EFCC and
mhm,
dismantle the top level of that organization. We've seen it now. We saw it in 2019. We just
mhm,
saw it this year. And
mhm,
the last administration of the EFC has been particularly good, and we were working with them
mhm,
at the chairman level
mhm,
and achieving quite a bit of success. And now the new person comes in, we lose our connections. We're
mhm,
reduced to working with detectives.
mhm,
But fortunately, we've had partners that have gone in country
mhm,
and sat down in front of the new chairman and says, "Look, we have a list of criminals, and here's the evidence, and we want them
mhm.
arrested." And the FCC has complied.
That's good.
Uh,
Mm,
so um, our partner is doing these hunts now on a periodic basis to
Okay.
accumulate long lists of criminals that they will then go in
Mm-hmm.
and get local authorities to arrest
Mm-hmm.
based principally, they're not actually arresting them based on cyber criminality. They're
Mm-hmm.
arresting them based upon tax evasion.
Okay. Okay. That
And
works.
and and that's a strategy for you to think
Yeah.
about as well, because
Mm-hmm.
it's a much easier crime to
Mm-hmm.
prove initially,
Yeah.
because you can look at an individual and you can see their visible wealth, their house, their cars, their
Mm-hmm.
gold, their clothing, their
Mm-hmm.
luxuries. And then you can go to the tax authority and ask, have these people been paying significant taxes? And obviously the answer is no.
No. Yeah.
So they can be easily arrested based upon the suspicion
Mm-hmm.
of tax avoidance and tax fraud.
Mm-hmm.
And then once arrested, they seize the devices and their paperwork and their bank accounts, and they can see the source for their funding, their financing being
Yeah.
cyber criminality, and then they're charging them with that. So that's a
Yeah.
strategy that's been working very effectively in Nigeria.
Oh, that's
And
good.
that's how they're able to walk into a location and arrest, 50, 60 people at a time, because
Mm-hmm.
they all have demonstrable wealth that they're not able to account for.
Account for, yeah. That's true.
And even in the United States, it's always been the go-to
Mm-hmm.
prosecution when
Mm-hmm.
addressing organized crime, that it's often very difficult to prove the actual crimes themselves because of lack of evidence, lack of witnesses,
Mm-hmm.
but you can see their wealth.
Yeah.
And under tax codes, they're obligated to provide proof of the sources, the origins, and the fact that they paid taxes on that wealth.
Yeah. That's true.
So,
That's
so
true.
keep
That's
that in
true.
mind
I
in
will.
we're strategizing with law
Mm-hmm.
enforcement there in Ghana. So let me ask you about that.
Mm-hmm.
So you have an organization in Ghana, the EOCO,
Yeah. Yoko, yeah.
and it's my understanding that they have an equivalent charter to the EFCC in Nigeria, that
Mm-hmm.
they're
That's true.
responsible for the administering of the laws against financial crimes, and that includes frauds and scams, etc., both
Yeah.
that occur domestically and those that occur uh, and victimize those people outside of Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
We, from our point of view,
Mm-hmm.
they won't talk to us.
Okay.
And from our point of view, we can't actually see that they're doing anything.
Hmm. Interesting.
In fact, no one in Nigeria, excuse me, in Ghanaian law enforcement
Mm-hmm.
seems willing to talk to crime prevention organizations outside of the country very much.
Hmm. I see. Okay.
We there was a period of time, I think it was 2019,
Mm-hmm.
where we began a dialogue with the cyber crimes unit of the Ghanaian police.
Yeah.
And within a very short period of time, we began to suspect that their interests were not for the betterment of Ghana or the reduction of crime, but
Mm-hmm.
that they, in fact, were completely saturated with cyber criminals.
Okay. Hmm.
So we obviously discontinued such conversations. Can you
Hmm.
talk a little bit of, maybe this is a challenge for you, because we
Mm-hmm.
know sometimes what authority, like in Ghana, can be like if you talk about them too openly.
Oh yeah. 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 I mean, yeah, let me put it this way. It's a Ghanaian cultural phenomenon, especially when you're engaging with the authorities. You would want to observe certain protocols, and approach.
Yes.
in getting to meet them and even bringing the issues to the fore. So it's a delicate grounds, when you are dealing with the authorities here. Yoko is responsible, and then we also have there's a financial unit or department that is also responsible for blue collar, white collar crimes. They work together with the Yoko. And then when I look at the time frame that you spoke about, just around 2018, 2019, the cybercrime unit would technically still be a baby.
Right.
And the gentleman in charge at that time, I think was Dr. Gustav, right? And it being a baby, they were still getting to grasp with, the issues, especially on the policy and infrastructure. How do they even retrain their police men or women to handle these issues, right? So I'm not sure who you dealt with, but my thinking, even at that time, trying to get to them was that they were not ready logistically and in terms of manpower to go after the criminals. They would have been looking at infrastructure, resources, retraining the men and the women on the force to be able to deal with the issues. They are aware of the crime being committed. They know to a good extent who the cyber criminals are. But how do they even arrest someone and forensically analyze their electronic devices? How do
Right.
they do that? Do they know how to use a Faraday bag to go to the victim's location with a warrant, immediately seize the equipment, store them in the right way, bring them to the forensic lab? They didn't have a forensic lab at that point, you know. So I think around that time they were still baby stepping to where we would want them to be. But this time around, we being from last year till now, I don't know if you've tried to make contact with them again, because the current head of the IOCO, she was a she's a lady that was big in terms of operational and efficiency in the Ghana Police Service, but she was moved to the IOCO, and she's making tremendous progress with issues related to cybercrime. I think she was at the forefront of helping the US authorities, collaborating with the US authorities to go after the criminal car syndicate, all the way from the East Coast to Ghana. They they teamed up with Interpol to go after those criminals and seize those cars.
Right.
So I know she is heavy, heavy into cybersecurity and cybercrime, and it might be worth re-engaging, or if we have to make that approach again, find the appropriate channels and then make the case to them. Because there's an overwhelming number of cases in terms of victims, and you just don't want to focus on arresting the criminals and prosecuting them, but you also don't want to forget about the victims, because at the end of the day, if the funds are not recouped for the victims and they still feel traumatized, you have a large pool of victims who just lament and they give up on the system.
I
So,
think that the approach that we were communicating with the
mhm,
Nigerians during the
mhm,
pandemic, especially,
mhm,
was an approach that made a great deal of sense, which is
mhm,
yes, you have to go after the individual cyber criminals because they are the criminal actors.
mhm,
But more importantly than that
mhm.
is A, going after the infrastructure that the criminals are using.
Yeah,
That means being more vigilant in the banking and the money movement sector. As
yeah,
you mentioned, the money laundering side associated with cars. That's an
yeah,
infrastructure element.
yeah,
Um, the EFCC was very successful in going over or going after the housing industry that
mhm.
houses these individuals,
Real
in other words,
estates, yeah.
landlords and property
Mhm,
owners, and making it clear to them that if they allow this criminality to take place in their property,
mm,
they not only run the risk of losing the property being seized as as proceeds of crime, but they themselves can face criminal conspiracy charges for not being vigilant in the management of their property. So they've been quite successful in working through the banking industry, through the money transfer industry, through the locations where these crimes are being committed. A strong focus on the training infrastructure, because obviously these are complex crimes and the individuals have to be trained. It's just not something, that once they learn the operations, the techniques, the psychology, etc., they can effectively employ it. But it starts with some form of training. In Nigeria, it was going after and shutting down these private schools that were training 20 to 50 individuals at a time. But we're beginning a conversation that I think might be particularly interesting and effective in Ghana. And that is simply this. One of the challenges of the work that we do with victims is to get them to disengage with the emotional connection with the criminal and to be able to recognize them for who they are. And I'm not apologizing for a second, because criminality is a choice. One of our advisory board members is himself a career cyber criminal. He went to jail for dozens of years. Escaped from jail, caught again, but he was a cyber criminal back in the 90s. So he was one of those who began that industry, and we are thankful for his advice and guidance in helping us to understand the criminal mind. And one of the things that I see amongst these criminals is, yes, they come in and they're young, in their teens and in their early 20s, and they're excited with the money that they can make, and they don't think about the horrific psychological impact that it has on their victims, whether it's in Ghana or outside of Ghana. When you take people's savings, their retirement, take their homes because they're encouraged to refinance or take out new loans, etc., and they lose. It may seem like they can afford it, but they cannot, and it destroys lives. In the United States alone, up to 20 people take their life a day as a result of these crimes. And when they're stealing from people in Ghana, they're having the same kind of impact. And we collaborated with a National Geographic series called Trafficked to visit Ghana. I believe it was in 2021, and they met with various Ghanaian fraudsters. And interestingly enough, in that series, these are not monsters. And it sounds terrible when the victims that we help hear us talk about them as ordinary people doing terrible things. We understand the psychology, compartmentalization, and the ability to take that work that they do and block it off from their family lives. It's like the Nazi prison camp mentality. These are normal people doing horrific, terrible things. But what we see is, not only does it terribly traumatize the victims, wherever those victims are, but it also traumatizes the people that are engaged in that crime as well. Because trauma, which we understand very well, we're a trauma-informed care certified organization. And part of our mission from the very beginning has been to fully understand the psychological experience that victims face.
Mm.
And through that, also to understand the methods, the practices, the techniques, the technologies, the approaches, and the organizational structures of the criminals that are engaged in this.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen interesting things because we've had criminals
Mm-hmm.
who left the business because they couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
They experienced trauma themselves
Mm-hmm.
in traumatizing their victims.
Victims, yeah.
And trauma doesn't go away, it
Mm-hmm.
accumulates. And if it is not properly addressed,
Mm-hmm.
then it has lifelong impacts. And
Mm-hmm.
we are seeing this
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the ex criminals that we talk to in Ghana
Okay.
and in
Mm-hmm.
other places
Mm-hmm.
who we had one not so long ago basically say to us that he's stopped and he's trying to stay away from it, but
Mm-hmm.
economically it's almost like a drug. He's drawn back to it
Yeah.
because he cannot survive any
Mm-hmm.
other way.
Yeah.
And we can't support people like that
Mm-mm.
because we're sorry, you are a criminal. You chose
Mm-hmm.
to do this.
Mm-hmm.
We know from the history of the world,
Mm-hmm.
everyone can make a choice for criminality or not.
Yeah.
And you can apply your intelligence in other ways as an entrepreneur to start a
Mm-hmm.
business, even if it's a micro business.
Yeah.
And you can start a store, you can create a business, you can be a taxi driver. There's a million things
Mm-hmm.
anyone can do. And it may
Mm-hmm.
seem impossible, but there
Mm-hmm.
are always opportunities.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
I think you're in a unique position by being able to talk to the parents.
Yeah.
What if, as a part of what you communicate,
Mm-hmm.
if you started to talk about it's not exactly religious, but in a way it is.
Mm-hmm.
What if you started to communicate with the religious leaders, but
Mm-hmm.
also the parents and communicated this concept?
Mm-hmm.
This hurts your soul.
Yeah.
Not just from a religious point of view,
Yeah. Literally, it does.
but literally,
Mm-hmm.
because what you're doing is, the concept of karma in the
Mm-hmm.
Buddhist world.
Yeah.
Another way of looking at karma is to call it trauma.
Mm-hmm.
The more bad things you do, the
Mm-hmm.
more trauma you accumulate.
Yeah.
And that trauma will ruin your future life.
Yeah.
I think personally, as
Mm-hmm.
someone who understands trauma and the psychology of this from both sides of the equation, I'm not a psychologist, I'm an
Okay.
anthropologist.
Okay.
So my background, I have two PhDs. I have a PhD in archaeology and I have
Mm-hmm.
a PhD in finance,
Okay.
along with a bunch of master's degrees. So one of my masters is anthropology, and I spent quite a bit of time um, working in that field while I was doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
But understanding this from a cultural perspective,
Yeah.
that one of the unique challenges once upon a time from a anthropological point of view
Mm-hmm.
was, how do you convince cannibals in the Amazon and in Southeast Asia, places like Borneo, and even in the Philippines for a
Mm-hmm.
long time, how do you convince cannibals that it's a bad thing to do?
Mm-hmm.
You translate, and this is going to sound bizarre,
Yeah.
but you translate the harm that they're doing to others into
Mm-hmm.
harm that they're doing to themselves.
Yeah.
It's a risk reward proposition. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's foundational in cybersecurity, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you can communicate with certain classes of criminals, particularly
Hmm.
the non-hardened criminals, the ones
Yeah.
that are not making giant amounts of money,
Hmm.
that are in it for the money and they don't care what it does. But if you
Yeah.
could reach the youth,
Hmm.
the teenagers in the early 20s that are just getting into it, who've maybe done it for a year or two, and
Hmm.
and they want to start a family, they want to have children,
Hmm.
and you talk to them about the harm that they're doing to their souls, the harm that they're
Hmm.
doing to their psychology,
Yeah.
and the fact that this will influence their relationships with their wives or their husbands,
Yeah.
the model that they'll be creating for their children,
Hmm.
who may in fact grow up to be cyber criminals and defraud and deceive and scam
Hmm.
other people in their same community.
Hmm.
That at a certain point we have to take a stand and
Hmm.
be rational human beings
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stop focusing on the gold and focus on the harm that it's doing to our
Hmm.
community. Because you mentioned the blacklisting by Europe.
Hmm.
That's a tangible harm that's
Hmm.
being done to every Ghanaian.
Yeah.
And it will only get worse as the crackdown on money laundering in all of its forms. It means
Yeah.
that Ghana will have less and less access to capital, less and less access to international banking, less
Hmm.
and less access to the global uh, infrastructure, commerce,
Yeah.
because of this reputation that it has.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
as bad as it gets.
Yes.
Ghana actually isn't at the actual bottom of the
No.
list,
Yeah.
but
But we're pretty in a bad spot. Top.
you're in the bottom third.
Yeah.
But so that might be a thought. And
Yes.
Confidence over in Nigeria, one of her strategies has been to teach girls
Hmm.
cybersecurity as a profession, not only to help lift them out of poverty,
Yes.
but because they are influencers in their culture.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the same thing here with us too.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about operationally some of the things that you're doing and are able to create this core of individuals and young people who are properly trained, who are seeing that cybersecurity and all of the skill sets that go with that become a profession for them of integrity and honesty.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you. Just before I jump to your question, I just wanted to say that from what you just described, there's there's a perception amongst a good chunk of the Ghanaian populace, and this stems from way back, that people in the developed country, like US, Europe, and Asia, have money.
Right.
And I'm sure you're aware of this. And the money, intrinsically grows on trees, and it's
Trust
easy.
me, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's easy to get money. So what is the problem if I just take $100? The person gets $25 an hour, and he can easily make that money back um, within a day or two. So that perception is rife amongst the core of individuals that get into the cybercrime activity, that someone loses $20,000, they can easily make it back. Insurance will pay for it. They are not going to get homeless. My
No,
point being
no
that,
insurance when it comes to
yes,
individuals.
yes,
There is no insurance.
exactly. But folks back in the African space, or especially in Ghana, have that perception. They do not see the impact of their actions. They think the victims can easily recover. And one of the things that we have discussed on our board is to find partners in Europe or in US that can relate to us stories of victims, that victims can share their stories on video. And then we can take that content back to the schools, the churches, and the mosque, and let the people hear firsthand. We will transcribe to local language if we have to. Let the people hear that this thing that the youth are doing, this is the implication. It's literally like someone in Ghana stealing from another family and the family losing their house or losing their financial, you know, resources or savings. It's no different because back home in Ghana, that picture is not clear. They
Right.
feel that the the individual, the victim, can recover easily. The government will come in and support, you know. So um, shifting the narrative from law enforcement and allowing the victims to share their stories and bringing those stories to the population through, the media, through our outreach campaigns makes a lot of difference because, like you said, these are not bad people. They are making a choice to do crime,
Right.
thinking that thinking that once they compartmentalize the activities, they are good to go. But once you expose the impact of their actions and the fact that law enforcement can get to you from Europe, from US, it's not like you are hidden. They just haven't gotten to you yet. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when, if you decide to stay in this track. So you
And
have to
actually,
stop.
just on that one point,
Yeah.
what's worse is we don't talk about this much
Hmm.
in the US,
Hmm.
but it's become real.
Hmm.
So there are many, many large private security companies in the world,
Hmm.
in Europe, in the United States, and in Asia. And we heard a story that I cannot detail
Yeah.
um, about a European security company working on behalf of a large European corporation
Hmm.
recently went into Liberia,
Hmm.
and there were 5 dead left behind,
Mm.
Liberians
Oh.
that were engaged in cybercrimes.
Mm. Mm.
If you think about the money that's involved in some of these crimes,
Hmm.
particularly when we're talking about what's known as CEO and BEC scams, which is
Yeah.
just another variation of
Yes.
of social
Yeah.
engineering,
Hmm.
and it has the possibility of very large payouts and rewards,
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of dollars, certainly.
Hmm.
So the story is that we heard that what the company made a decision to do was to make an example,
Hmm.
and they hired mercenaries,
Hmm.
which
Interesting.
was actually relatively inexpensive, and they
Hmm.
made an example. But it's not an example that I've seen show up in the news. We've heard about
Yeah.
it from a third party,
Hmm.
but um, but it's there are dangers to the criminals
Yes.
that are
Hmm.
quite potentially real, and they
Yeah.
will get more real as the numbers grow. Because right now, today, the best estimates in the world are that the cybercrime losses on a global basis
Hmm.
are several trillion dollars, more
Dollars.
than the
Yeah.
gross domestic product of all of West Africa,
Hmm.
more than the gross domestic product of Germany.
Yeah. Yeah.
At a certain point, countries have to respond to this
Hmm.
militarily,
Hmm.
and that's the danger.
Hmm.
But it's also that countries will respond to this diplomatically. They'll
Hmm.
respond to it through foreign aid.
Hmm.
That such criminality will affect everyone in the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
True.
so I interrupted you, and I apologize for that.
Oh,
So
that's all right. It's good hearing, listening to you and giving that
what I was
information.
going
I
to say
appreciate it.
is
Yeah.
we do have videos exactly like you talked about, and you are
Oh, great.
welcome
Yeah.
to use them for that purpose. They're on our YouTube channel already.
Awesome. Okay.
And if we can help with developing something more specific, we're
Yeah.
happy to do that.
That will be great. That will be great. We will talk about that. I'll speak to that as I respond to your earlier question as to what we are doing operationally to engage with the populace. So one of the things, amongst all the things that we've discussed, our approach has been to initiate a program that we call the Cyber Safety Ambassadorial Program. So that targets age group between 10 years to 18 years.
Mhm.
And we go into the schools and we work with the school to, develop or implement the program. We recruit students who we call as the ambassadors, the core students. So each school has got 40 students that form the cloud. Now we arm them with resources and training. We teach them how to spot, dangers online, how to report it, how to escalate the issue, how they can talk to their colleagues or their friends about the dangers online and everything related to online safety. They are able to network with their peers and even with their parents. So one of the criteria for a child or a student to join this program is that the student must be able to enroll one of their parents or guardians into the program. So by extension, we influence that parent as well. And one of the requirements of the parent is that the parent must also influence another parent. So at a point in time, we are working with our Google grant to do an impact assessment of that program and to also see how we can expand that cyber safety ambassadorial program. Now, we've also realized that a large chunk of our victims are the ladies or the females, the women in society. They easily fall prey to these dangers. But if we arm them with the knowledge, they will be able to influence change. So in our cyber safety ambassadorial program, we reserve a number, a quota for females to join the program. That is non-negotiable. We need this number of females to join the program, and then the men or the boys are allowed to also top up. And it's making a lot of difference. Now, there's so much to do. Now,
I understand. And
from
so
the
much
other
to talk about in a short time.
exactly, I know, right? Now, from on the policy level, the government is focusing on child online protection, but we are forgetting the parents, right? Parents are being forgotten, they are being left out of the conversation. And we've come to realize is that when the kids are getting enrolled into cybercrime, it starts from the home. The parents are the first to see it. The parents are the first to see that the child is now withdrawn. The child is now staying indoors and being him to himself and spending more time on the internet more. Now, the Ghanaian culture has got a certain perception that if your child stays home more or stays out of trouble, doesn't play with the area, the neighborhood guys or girls, it doesn't roll, is always at home, does his homework, is in his bedroom, is doing his house chores, that is a good child. Now, that cultural perception has changed over the last 10 years. Now, parents must necessarily be worried if the child is spending more time online than physically engaging. So we try to get to the parents to teach them that, hey, don't give these gadgets, devices to the children and let them be on their own. In fact, it is advisable to get them to engage in outside activities, play a soccer game, run outside, than they spending more time online unsupervised. So our program, operationally brings all these stakeholders together. And to ensure consistency, we we are scaling it to, and pardon me, we are trying to find a right partner that can help us develop content that we can apply to the schools to certify the schools as being cyber safe. And for a school to be certified as cyber safe, they must meet these criteria. 60 to 80% of their student population must receive cyber safety training. The parents of these students must receive cyber training, and there must be a scientific data to testify to the fact that those trainings have been applied, it's been recorded, and it's been confirmed, and the school will be cyber safe certified. It will come with its benefits or rewards. But at this point, we as an organization on the grassroots, we are looking for partners that can help us develop training content that we can impact to parents and to the students towards a certification program. I spoke to the Ministry of Education. They are interested in this approach. And I spoke to the Cybersecurity Authority through their child online protection. They've also expressed interest in that. But within our culture, I, for example, have realized that you would have to show traction, implement the program on a pilot basis, get the scientific data, and then take it upstairs or take it to the people up, and let there be a a bottom up approach of swelling demand and request for this program to be scaled out, and then they will listen. But if we've tried before taking the program to the top to get approvals and to get it pushed down, and bureaucracy will just stop it is in its track. So that is what we've been doing for the last couple of months, working with on the grassroots level, and hopefully we would have our second National Digital Parenting Week very soon. I'm working on that program, and I've had this vision in my mind that we have Safer Internet Day coming up in February, but there's nothing like Digital Parenting Awareness Week, at least in Ghana, that is not there. And I feel that it's something that if we can also partner with sister organizations across the globe to create a digital national, international digital parenting awareness week, where on that during that week we'll flood our channels with information as to how parents should deal with these issues. Because trust me, in Ghana, a lot of parents don't know what they are doing when they buy these gadgets for electronic gadgets from their children. And that is where the issue starts,
Yes.
when the problem starts from.
And they assume that the child is more knowledgeable than they are when the
Exactly.
child actually is
It
not.
is not. Yes.
So I think that, and my organization thinks that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there is a direction that can
Mm-hmm.
have a tangible benefit by focusing on the harm that it does
Mm-hmm.
to the youth that go in this direction.
Yes.
That's
Mm-hmm.
something parents and families can understand because
True.
they understand the harm that comes with regular types of
Of crime.
gangster behavior.
Yes. Yes.
And they just don't understand yet that these online crimes
Mm-hmm.
come with the same kind of harm. And
Yes.
I think that there's an offline conversation that we can have about how to address that in a variety of ways. And we're
Mm-hmm.
very happy to do that.
Awesome.
Um, I think that, aligning yourself with organizations like Confidence
Mm-hmm.
in Nigeria,
Mm-hmm.
and developing a larger regional structure
Mm-hmm.
of organizations would also be
Mm-hmm.
incredibly positive and
Yeah.
beneficial because she's developed many of those programs,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know to what extent she would be willing to share them with you.
Mm-hmm.
Confidence, are you listening? Uh, so,
Hello, confidence.
so, um, I think that it is important to address these challenges on a
Mm-hmm.
regional, not just a national basis. Because as you
Yeah.
have mentioned, Nigerians will come into Ghana, Indians will
Mm-hmm.
come into Ghana,
Mm-hmm.
Ghanaians will go into the Ivory Coast and into
Yeah.
Liberia and
It's
elsewhere.
cross-national. Yeah.
Right. These crimes are cross-national. That's how they began in Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that some victim communities still seize upon is the image from 15 years ago when Ghanaian men were sitting on the floor in cyber cafes
Yeah.
and trying to engage in scams in that way. That world is gone.
It's gone. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we are happy to collaborate and contribute in any way. We're a
Mhm.
nonprofit, so our money
Yeah.
has to go to
Hmm.
our mission, but in
Hmm.
terms of our time and our intellectual capacity and our
Yeah.
capabilities, we're
Hmm.
happy to provide as much of that as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Um, I think we're kind of reaching the end of an hour, and that's
Yes.
a long conversation, but this conversation can go on for days.
Yeah, I know.
So I want to thank you, Manny, for
Hmm.
spending your time today with me and for having this conversation. And I hope that this will only be the beginning.
Hmm.
And you know, I applaud you for the courage that it takes to stand up and do what you're doing in your country.
Thank you.
Um, so for the work that you're doing, you're a hero to the people of
Mm.
Ghana, whether they know it or not.
Hmm. Yeah, thank
And
you.
and I hope that the sponsors of your organization realize
Hmm.
this as well. And
Yeah.
we will take the idea of
Hmm.
parental family awareness. Now there is an event, and I've got to
Hmm.
go and look it up, that is associated with family awareness.
Okay.
And I believe it's from FOSI, the
Yeah. Yeah,
Family
Fosi, yeah.
Online Safety
Hmm.
organization, that they
Hmm.
are the keeper of that event.
Hmm.
But if there isn't something that is well suited, um, we're happy to take on role in helping to make that possible.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
There's one that we're working on for an awareness month, but we've
Hmm.
decided to change it to a week also. An awareness month is actually too much time.
Too much, yeah.
A day
Yeah.
is not enough. A
No, a
week
week
is the
is
perfect amount.
hmm. Hmm. I
But
agree.
another suggestion that I have for you
Hmm.
is go to the universities
Hmm.
and speak to the mental health educational departments,
Hmm.
the psychology departments,
Hmm.
and encourage them to begin looking at integrating into their curriculum and possibly
Hmm.
even a specialization
Hmm.
of victim psychology as a much stronger area of focus.
Hmm.
Because truthfully, the victims who are experiencing these crimes,
Hmm.
they don't get over it in a few days or a few
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah.
These are lifelong traumatic events. Our experience is the minimum that a victim can successfully go through a focused recovery program like we have invented is typically about 18 months, but often it's many years.
Mm.
And the
Mm.
trauma that they experience from this one deception is a
Hmm.
lifelong trauma that
Hmm.
can result in suicides, and it does,
Hmm.
but it also results in significantly other harm to them that lasts for years. Harm to their families, harm to their current and future relationships,
Hmm.
harm to the connections between parents and children in those families.
Hmm.
Um, it's profound. Now, we as an organization have dedicated years
Hmm.
to the understanding and the development and the creation of core knowledge
Hmm.
about the psychological effects associated with these crimes from particularly the victim experience point of view. And what
Okay.
we found is there is very little concrete knowledge worldwide
Hmm.
about the psychological effects on these
Yeah.
victims.
Yeah.
Sexual assault, yes. Domestic abuse, yes.
Hmm.
But in many ways, these are as severe as the trauma that victims of sexual assault experience.
Hmm.
simply without the physical component.
Okay.
And if you can get the psychologists in your country on your side to begin
Mm-hmm.
looking at the damage that the victimization does,
Mm-hmm.
that's another ally that you can count on in
Yeah.
communicating the effects to the country at large.
Yeah.
And it's somewhat unpopular to look at criminal
Yeah.
psychology
Mm-hmm.
from the standpoint of the harm that they're doing to themselves. But trust
Mm-hmm.
me when I say it is as profound as what's being done to the victims.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
believe that to be a strategy that can be usefully employed in the religious, social, and parental
Mm-hmm.
categories as well.
Yeah.
So before we end this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
um, would you like to give your final thoughts, things that we haven't been able to touch upon, um, anything that you would like to say before we bring this to a close?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Doc. And I appreciate the time that we spent together, going over all the issues that we have discussed. I believe um, there's more that we can do together, getting everything, all activities synergized in a way that, would benefit the Ghanaian populace and by extension, the global community as well. So I look forward to having a discussion either offline towards that. My, upon your last point, one of my key interests would be putting together, um, mental health departments across some of our private and public universities, bringing them together, um, getting the counseling units in these institutions, especially the universities, also together on the same platform and engaging the Ghana Medical Association, their psychologists to also come to join us on that platform to talk about cyber psychology and victimology and how you know the victims also have a way or how what the victims go through in terms of recovery. And for me to do that, I'll probably need your assistance in terms of knowledge and experience. And if you have a team of experts that can speak to the issues and contextualize it in the Ghanaian or African space, that would be awesome. Um, but one of the things that got me to reach out to you was that Ghana is currently lacking, from my perspective, lacking in terms of victim support, you know, and having, reading your mission and your objectives and seeing what you're doing across the globe with your partners will be awesome to have that, rolled out in Ghana as well, especially for the victims and taking it to the grassroots. And I always believe in the bottom-up approach, letting the people feel the impact of our programs and our services, and then taking that to the policymakers to let them see the results scientifically backed with data as to what we are doing or what is being done. So I look forward to having that conversation with you. If there's another time we can schedule to look at the specifics of such an initiative, I would really
Yes,
appreciate it.
yes,
Um, at this point, we as an organization are not looking for strategic financial support. We are looking for resources, intellectual capacity building, individuals that can, or organizations that can help us, with the broad spectrum of issues that we are dealing with: victims, awareness, research, um, follow-up, impact assessment, that sort of thing. So I really look forward. If we advertise on our channels that if you've been victimized, reach out. We are going to open you know, a floodgate of requests for support. But we are not equipped with human capacity, an ability to deal with the intricacies of victimology and, the psychology part of it. We do have people in Ghana, mental health specialists and folks like that, who can easily understand and blend their training with the online scope of things. And once we get these people on a platform and your team can engage them and share that knowledge, we as an organization can then tap into this local resource and build out a support team that can from time to time receive support from your end, or training from your end to make the impact.
Absolutely,
The
because as you know,
mhm,
part of our charter is
mhm.
to support victims wherever they are.
Good. Yeah.
And we do this without consideration of race,
Yes.
religion, orientation,
Hmm.
language, or culture, or country of origin.
Okay.
Language is, of course, the greatest challenge. Our
Yeah.
organization is fluent in English and Spanish,
Hmm.
but through our partner organizations, we cover, languages from Malay to Indonesian to Japanese
Awesome.
to
Mm-hmm.
Thailand,
Mm-hmm.
Thai, uh, European languages.
Mm-hmm.
We have a SCARS organization in Poland and in Bulgaria,
Yeah.
and we work with our partners in the United Kingdom and France and elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what we can show you is a model that would be quite adaptable to
Mm-hmm.
Ghana or
Mm-hmm.
anywhere in West Africa to
Mm-hmm.
support local victims.
Good. Yeah.
The language is the challenge because we don't speak anything but English,
You
and I
translate
don't
it.
know if that is sufficient. But we have a model that we've developed with great challenges,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because victims tend to break apart into kind of three groups.
Mm-hmm.
There are the realists who understand what's happened to them and they want help and they want to recover from this. And
Yeah.
there are those who are in denial, who have great difficulty accepting that it happened, or they don't want to talk about it, or whatever. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not blaming victims, simply
Mm-hmm.
understanding them.
Mm-hmm.
And those are individuals that need psychological support, professional psychological support. And then there are
Mm-hmm.
those who are just angry, they're enraged
Yeah.
by what happened to them. And
Mm-hmm.
those are the greatest challenges, because until that rage and that anger can be brought under control and they can be supported,
Mm-hmm.
they unfortunately won't recover. But in understanding all of this, we have a very clear map of the psychology, the
Mm-hmm.
victimologies, the demographics that are associated with it, and a model for real support and professional recovery,
Mm-hmm.
that is trauma informed, that is grief informed, where
Okay.
we're certified in suicide prevention and we're certified in a multitude of areas. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the other thing that would be that we can guide you through
Mm-hmm.
is the process of how you can make victims advocacy and victims assistance and victim
Yeah.
services
Okay.
a profession within Ghana
Thank
that
you
is
very much.
internationally recognized,
Yeah.
to bring you into the global governing body
Mm-hmm.
that is responsible for that, uh, and even lead you through the pathway of becoming certified in victims assistance,
Mm-hmm.
all of which will contribute to your attractiveness
Mm-hmm.
in the eyes of your donors.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think the one that we talked about first, which is going to the psychology departments in the university
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and making them an ally.
Yeah.
And I think the way to do that is that you have an asset in our organization,
Mm-hmm.
which is a
Okay.
profound comprehension of victim psychology
Mm-hmm.
that you can bring to them in a form that they can easily assimilate
Yes.
and speaks in their language.
Yeah.
Because while we try to make the work that we do understandable to victims, it
Mm-hmm.
is fundamentally sound psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, we have two psychologists on our board of directors, one
Okay.
of which, interestingly enough, was hurt. Well, actually, both of them were
Mm-hmm.
victims of these kind of crimes.
Okay.
And one of them was already a psychologist. So that speaks to how
Mhm.
easily even someone who is an expert in her own mind can fall
Mhm.
victim to these.
Yeah.
But the other one realized by going through our recovery program
Mhm.
that there was a gap in knowledge and specialization
Mhm.
in helping victims, and went back to the university and obtained a 4-year degree and a master's degree in
Mhm.
psychology with a specialization on victim psychology because
Mhm.
of that. She just graduated literally.
Okay.
So we're very proud to have contributed to not only her education and becoming a professional in that field, but an emerging specialization in online crime victim, fraud, deception victim psychology. So we're eager to aid in whatever ways that we can, and we'll talk about that offline.
Okay. I
So
appreciate that.
thank you, Emmanuel.
Thank you.
Um, and on behalf of our organization, this has been a pleasure to speak with you and learn more about the challenges that you face
Mhm.
on every one of these fronts inside of Ghana.
Mhm.
And again, I want to say how proud we are of your heroism in confronting these issues in a country where it's not always easy to do so.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank
So
you.
thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Doc, and we appreciate it. We can just keep working hard and um, synergizing across Africa. Hopefully with confidence. Confidence, if you're hearing me, I'll reach out again.
I'm going
Hopefully
to
we would
make
have
sure that
time.
Confidence sees this video.
Hopefully we can make some time. We spoke a couple of months ago. We had a chat, but I think our schedules are tight, so we've not been able to touch base again. But definitely looking forward to collaborating and building a strong synergy amongst our organizations, and making the impact that we all want to see.
Excellent. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Doc.
Bye bye.